Good morning. Welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the Supermac and Gibbo show. Good morning, chaps.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Hi, John.
Good to see you.
Lads.
Good morning, everybody in the chat. I see quite a few in there already. Ready to ask your questions to the two legends. And as we build up to the Brentford game this coming weekend, and BT got in very early this morning with a question saying that it is understood that the Premier League bonuses forced the club to pay players around £20 million for their Champions League qualifications. Concerns that huge bonus payments would cause financial fair play problems at the club. The board have asked players to alter their contracts and decrease bonus payments. So the question BT wants to ask is, would Malcolm have agreed to take a cut of 40% if he was a player?
No. Once you agreed a contract, that's it. You've agreed it. They have to. If they wanted to modify the contract but not change the terms, then yes, I would agree to that. But
Ian makes the point that it was part of Ashley's tactics, offer huge bonuses, that his intention was never to pay them. The difference is now, though, we're actually doing well. There's no sort of penny pinching here. Would you prefer 200 grand a week or a bonus payment? That's a good point, that Ian. But he does get the point. And he also says, I have a similar thing where I work. Bonuses can mean the difference, but honestly, I'd rather just get a decent wage. So interesting points. Go on, John.
It is. I was about to say, and the gentleman already picked up on it. This all dates back originally to Ashley. Remember, there was a player dispute in Ashley's dying time here about bonuses and the wages, etc. And he walked in and said, I'll solve it if you get to Wembley in a cup final or you get into Europe. I'll give you these and these bonuses. And honestly believing Newcastle would never get to a Wembley final and would never get into Europe because all we did was fight relegation season after season. But those bonuses were accepted by the players at a players' meeting and so were signed. Now, Ashley was never going to have to pay them because it would be an absolute fluke under Ashley for us to get to Wembley or to get into Europe, even 6th or 7th, never mind the Champions League. But all of a sudden, they are signed, sealed, and delivered, like some of the poor sponsorship deals, and therefore they're the law at St James's Park. All of a sudden, last season, we not only make Wembley, but we'll make the top 4. So everything comes into play and has to be paid. And the new owners are sort of saying, look, this is a new era. These were set by the old people. They're unrealistic. The bar was set too small. We should be doing this every season. So let's renegotiate. Naturally, players have been saying, hey, what we sign, we sign. And if there's a change of ownership, that's just something that happens along the way. So that's how the dispute actually started.
Yeah, interesting to see this debate still continuing and grabbing the headlines again. We'll watch that one with interest. Thank you, Darren. You can get the T-shirt on the website, nufcmatters.com, if you are interested. JB, good morning. He says, morning all. Does Supermac and Gibbo believe that Tonali's muscle fatigue diagnosis has been vindicated? How substitutions, our sports scientists will very likely have been aware of it. Mal, interesting. Tonali, has got a little bit of muscle fatigue. We do have lots of sports scientists involved with football these days, including at Newcastle United. Is this something that would have indicated his decisions?
Yes, very much so. I think with Tonali, the game is so much quicker in the English league as opposed to playing over in Serie A, and so he's been playing at one pace of football, and he's now joined something into much quicker, and therefore his fitness levels have got to rise dramatically to keep up with the pace. And so after 4 or 5 games, it's understandable that he's suffering in that way. and I still think that Gordon has he's just about caught up, but he's been at the club for some while. But it's taken him all of this time to catch up on his fitness level.
I think the interesting thing with Tonali, guys, and this is just surmising the situation. We've all talked about 3 defeats on the trot, the need to change that completely against Brentford. And amongst many things, we've looked at the midfield and said that while Tonali, Bruno, and Joe Linton look to be the future of Newcastle, the immediate future of Newcastle, as 3 outstanding midfield players with current internationals with huge countries, Italy and Brazil, not smaller countries. They look to be the future. At the moment, it is not working because Tonali and Bruno aren't certain who's doing what. Defensively, I'm talking about. That needs working on in training. They haven't been able to work on it in the last fortnight because all 3 lads have been away. So we've talked about, is there a need to change the midfield against Brentford, to bring in Longstaff for his defensive work and his what I call dirty knees work. Now, if Howe was wanting to do that, Tonali could be an excuse with his injury. He could get a hold of Sandro when he comes back from Italy and say, "Look, mate, I understand you've got this. I understand what Malcolm's been saying about the pace of the game, etc., etc. I'm just going to pull you out of this one, but you're going to play at AC Milan against your old club, no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to try to play you twice in 3 days. So you sit out Brentford and we'll play you at AC Milan." You could then bring Longstaff in for Tonali against Brentford.
Sure, it makes sense, John.
It would. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, there is an excuse for the other 2 boys because they've had the long journey from South America. But you can't rest all 3 of them, and that's not Eddie's style. Eddie's style is belt and braces. He makes very little changes, and mainly they're forced upon him. Now, I know that the club sent a private plane to bring back Big Joe, Bruno, and Almiron from South America. But at the same time, the Brazilians, their match only finished at 5 o'clock yesterday morning, and they've still got 14 hours or 20 hours to fly back to England. So they're well under the cosh. He's not going to drop all 3. Is he going to play all 3? Well, if he wants to say to Tonali, and Tonali would accept it if he's got a guarantee of playing at AC Milan on Tuesday, he could use that situation to rest Tonali against Brentford, bring him back for AC Milan, and that puts Longstaff in. Because believe you me, it's first things first, and I think Malcolm would agree with this. It's first things first. It's no good having one eye on the Champions League, the players, I mean, because we need to beat Brentford. If we don't beat Brentford, we are losing pace with the top of the Premier League this early in the season. And also, can you imagine going to AC Milan if we've drawn at home to Brentford or we're still lost at home to Brentford? It would become Everest. AC Milan. We have got to beat them first. So he's got to put out a team and the players have got to concentrate. Somebody said to me, Gibbo, do you think with the players, remember when we went to Wembley, the players took the eye off the ball, didn't they? We lost 3 games on the bounce. So players took the eye off the ball. This huge day at Wembley sort of was a distraction and it all went and didn't work. Now, they're saying, will the Champions League after 20 years and the San Siro, an iconic stadium, an iconic team from the past, AC Milan, will that take the eye off the ball against Brentford? And my answer to that is, it's fans that are allowed to dream about Tuesday. These are professionals. These don't dream. These get it right. If we don't get it right against Brentford, AC Milan becomes unscalable. If we beat Brentford, we've got a good chance at AC Milan. We've got to beat Brentford. And the other thing I would say is if we took the eye off the ball at Wembley, and we did, in supposing we took the eye off the ball at Brentford for AC Milan, we've got 6 games in the Champions League. Are we going to take our eye off the ball every time we play in the Premier League? Well, because there's a Champions League game to come. After we play AC Milan, do we say the next league game that comes up, do we say, oh, our eyes off the ball because we're thinking of Paris Saint-Germain coming to St James's Park? We can't go down that route. We mustn't go down that route. The biggest game as we sit here, guys, isn't AC Milan. The biggest game is Brentford.
Do you agree, Mal?
Yes, because it's the next game. The most important game is always the next one. And it is vital that Newcastle get end this losing streak that they're on, 3 games in a row, and turn it round against Brentford. Look at last season, Newcastle. It was their biggest home victory, and it wouldn't be a bad thing if we could repeat that and get that confidence built up again. You know, when you think that that we first lost to Man City, but Newcastle played ever so well without creating chances. Against Liverpool, we looked a hell of a side for the first hour. That was for sure, and I think it was a lack of tactical change that finished up allowing Liverpool to break away in the last few minutes twice, and peg Newcastle back, and then go on and win the game. And against Brighton, thought we were an absolute shambles, and so you would hope with the break that there's been, that those that have remained in this country have really got to work hard and look to correct the whole situation. And so this Brentford game, it is vital for Newcastle to turn the season round. Then, once the Brentford game is won and over and done with, then you can start looking at AC Milan. But right now, the most important game of the season is Brentford.
Yeah.
Is muscle fatigue a recent term for something else, or have I been asleep for 70 years? It's an
Muscle
interesting question.
No, it's been called a variety of things over the years. Dear me, I used to suffer it in pre-season training when we were having to do long distance running. Oh, it absolutely killed me. And
it's not a posh expression for clamp, is it?
For what, John? Sorry,
Clamp. For having clamp. But
no, to try and explain, what did me in was long distance running. I was a sprinter, and so sprinting is something quite different to marathon running, for example. Quite different. But your body is totally different sprinting to that of a distance runner, and so therefore you have to treat it differently. But with football, pre-season training, you've got to build your fitness up very quickly and build stamina as well, to get you through 90 minutes every game and then 9 months of the season. And so what I found was that that I would really struggle when doing these distance runs. The first time I ever did a distance run, the pack disappeared over a hill and I got lost. You know,
it's like Usain Bolt taking on Mo Farah, isn't it? You know,
that's right. You know, and you reverse it, and Mo Farah were to sprint against Usain Bolt. It's no competition.
Yeah.
You know, yes. So that was the situation that I had.
I mean, it's going the team selection this weekend is going to be absolutely fascinating. It's almost going to be as fascinating as the hour and a half's match that follows, because you can make a case for Newcastle making 6 changes. For example, you can change the left back, you can change any of the 3 in midfield, you can change the centre forward with Callum Wilson, you can change your wingers. You could make 6 changes, or you could make just 1 change, Botman, if he's fit, or you can be unchanged. Now we know Eddie is more likely to be unchanged than 6 changes. I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. But he won't make wholesale changes. He won't change everything. That's not Eddie's style. That's not his style.
Right. The club that have really got the whole thing absolutely organised is Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. And he can literally put Team A out or Team B, so that whatever injuries, whatever out of form is taking place, that he's always got the cover and he can always swap it around. If there's 3 games in 8 days, then he can mix it all about and what have you, and he's got it down to a fine art. Newcastle, in effect, they're learning how to do this now with Champions League. And so that I think Eddie Howe has got to learn how to start just making those little changes to the side, maybe making 2 or 3 changes that suits the team to beat Brentford, then making another 2 or 3 changes to take on AC Milan over in the San Siro. It's a completely different task.
Yeah, totally different game, Malcolm, as you say.
Completely different.
But the interesting thing, in fairness to Newcastle, and we all lose sight of this, I think, Pep's been there 7 years. The owners have been there 15 years. It takes time to build up the sort of squad that Pep's got.
Yes, it does.
In the second full season of Eddie Howe and the new owners. And Pep's had 7 years, in Manchester City under the Sheikh has had 15 years. So naturally we aren't at the stage of Manchester City as yet. But as Malcolm says, that's got to be the aim. That's got to be where we're about.
And it will build over the years. But,
yes.
but there is one aspect that seems to be absolutely right at Manchester City, and that is that all 24 players, they're quite happy, and they've got a lot of respect for their manager to get it right each week with the teams that he picks, and there's nobody going kicking off that they're not getting a regular place in the side.
I think in fairness, it's early doors, Mal, and you're right there. But I think in fairness, Newcastle have got that. I think most of the players buy in. Well, all the players buy into Eddie Howe, and they. I mean, I'm not suggesting Callum Wilson has enjoyed being a regular sub. I'm not suggesting that Harvey Barnes is thrilled about waiting for his first start, but they buy into this. If they don't, they're no longer here. I'll give you John Joe Shelby and I'll give you Ryan Fraser. If they don't buy into that at St. James's, they're no longer here. They've gone.
Sure.
And I think the first team squad have bought into it. Lascelles has very much bought into it. Club skipper, who's almost reserve third choice centre half, but completely singing off the same song sheet. And Dummett has done the same. Cynics could say, well, they're better off doing that because they're not going to get as good a club, but they could play more often in another club. But they've bought into it. There is that spirit at the moment. The difficulty is going forward and buying more and more good players every window, as Newcastle must. Will they buy into it? So getting the right types as well as the good player is what's difficult, because sometimes the good player is a wronging off the park. It causes all sorts of trouble. So the juggling act for Eddie and everybody up there is getting the right types. But at the moment, the Newcastle are singing off the same sheet. The two that I would suggest perhaps weren't with Ryan Fraser for certain, and perhaps John Joe, no longer there. And John Joe
Yeah,
is just
sure,
about to go to
sure.
church.
Yeah, I always remember Alex Stock at Luton. He was asked by a player um, when he was signing the fella. He said, "Well, am I going to get a regular place?" And Alex Stock said, "If you're good enough."
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
how the players have got to see it themselves, not just the manager, but the players got to say, "Well, if I'm not in the side, I ain't good enough," or I'm being rested for whatever, like the Tonali discussion earlier on. But in the main, if you're not in the side, look to yourself, not the manager or
I mean,
whoever.
there's so many players at Newcastle could, if they're just looking at themselves at the moment, say I should be in the team. You can get Callum Wilson saying that. He's saying, I scored 18 Premier League goals last season. I've scored 2 this season, so I'm joint top scorer with Isaac, and I haven't even started a match. You
Sure.
can get Harvey Barnes saying, if I'm worth 40 million,
Right,
what am I sitting on the bench for? You can get Sean Longstaff saying, I was lauded last season as the glue that kept the midfield, but I'm not in the side. You can get Elliot Anderson saying, I played so well pre-season and I haven't got a kick from the start this season at all. I think they're all saying that, and that's natural. But what they're not saying is going around Monday to Friday with a pet lip on that they could trip over and causing trouble, talking behind the back of the coaches or the manager. They're singing off the same song sheet, and that is huge. And that has been, for me, that has been a huge part of Newcastle's success last season, getting to Wembley, getting to Champions League. Not only is it tactically correct, not only is it buying good players, but it's this team spirit and the togetherness that they've had. It's been quite special. And that's what worried me a little bit about Brighton, because I felt that there was an inevitability about it as the game went on, and Newcastle stopped pressing high and stopped doing the things that made them the side that they were. And for the first time, I wasn't seeing the Newcastle United I've got used to, and that was more alarm bells than the scoreline at the finish.
Sure. And when Newcastle are usually the side outrunning the other,
yes,
it's actually Brighton that was outrunning Newcastle.
Absolutely, and that has been
a bit of a shock.
Yeah, unheard of, Malcolm, of recent times. I mean, I think that was our worst display under Howe since we lost 3-2 at Villa, 3-0 at Villa towards the end of last season. I think that was the worst. That was a very, very poor display. As Malcolm said, you can look at Manchester City and Liverpool and take some things out of those games. I looked at Brighton and I couldn't take a single thing out.
Not a thing. Not a thing. No.
No,
did we have a shot at goal, by the way? I don't think we did we?
Well, apart from when Wilson come on and scored.
Oh, yes, but that was right at the death. But
right at the death,
but through the game, we didn't manage a shot on goal.
Yeah, definitely not. Okay, lots of questions coming in. Alan, good morning. It says, Malcolm and John, is it justification that Chris Riggs staying at Sunderland as he's now getting game time, whereas Lewis Miley has no chance of getting game time at Newcastle in the Brentford game? I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, in the Premier League, Mal, to give to give the youngsters a chance, because it's a higher standard than the standard that Chris Riggs playing in at Sunderland.
Yeah, yes, but I think that what Eddie Howe is doing, I think he's including these youngsters with the seniors, and so that they're learning every day that they go in training. They're learning and learning and learning, and that they're figuring it out how to play with the players that are there at Newcastle. And it all takes a little while, and you look at different players that have been signed in, and all of a sudden they're not around for weeks, for months, and that's because their fitness has got to be brought up to standard, And so with the youngsters, their football's got to be brought up to the point where they can go into the side, and it might take a couple of years. It might do. It could.
The interesting thing,
Give them the time.
This Chris Rigg is a wonderful young talent. His whole family's Newcastle United fans, by the way.
Sure,
but he's a wonderful talent. But the situation is very different at Sunderland to Newcastle. First and foremost, the people over, I know this from people telling me behind the scenes, the people that took over at Sunderland, their attitude was, to make Sunderland progressive within the amount of money we've got, we sign a load of players that are young. We put together a young side without pressure on them from inside the club about winning promotion into the Premier League. That pressure comes from the fans. Of course, the Sunderland fans want to get straight back in the Premier League, but there's none from within the club. And we produce some gems, the club benefit, then we sell them on for huge money, and we'll go out and buy some more young players. Vaguely similar to Brighton, but not quite the same. And so, if that is the way your side is built, if the manager knows that, so the pressure is not on him, you must be in automatic promotion places or your job's at risk, then you can put 16-year-olds in the team, because that is what the club want. There's no pressure on them. They're not in the top three. We've got to stay there. I mean, it was a wonderful thing from the point of view of the owners and the manager and the fans, I guess, when they made the playoffs last season, because it was unexpected, because they've got such a young team. This situation is there. But if you fast forward that to Newcastle with Miley or the young people, you know, the next game up after Brentford, we'll play AC Milan. Then we've got Paris Saint-Germain coming here. In between time, we've got Man City in the League Cup. It is very different to put 16 or 17-year-olds in at Newcastle.
Yeah, and talk to anybody who's had huge experience. You know, I've heard Graham Souness say this, and a lot of very experienced players, a lot of managers, coaches will say it: you win nothing with kids.
The fella that coined that phrase was Alan Hansen on Match of the Day, the Liverpool legend. And yes, higher up the chain from Lewis is Elliot Anderson, who's 20, not 17, and looking now desperate to get in more regularly than he has get in. I would suggest Elliot Anderson would walk into the Sunderland side with respect to Sunderland. It's a different situation there.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Lots of debates. Lots of people saying, Tom Dixon says, look at the way that Bobby Clark's come on at Liverpool. He's just young and now he's playing in and around the first team. So yeah, lots of different examples we can look at with that. But as always, we're halfway through the show. Time for the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com. And they've got a website, which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup a pen, a membership card, and a scarf. Then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com.
And if you want to see the lads live, they are going to be doing a match day talking at Louis' Liquor store, which is in the big market. So get yourself along there, pre-match and post-match. I think John's running a little piece in the Chronicle about it as well. Hope it goes well, lads. Enjoy that. Get yourself along. It's free entry. Always good to hear the lads' opinions pre-match and post-match. Lots of comments coming in. Andrew, good morning. He says he's got muscle fatigue watching this show on his exercise bike in his living room. Little FB says he gets that just getting off the settee. I'm feeling your pain, mate. I'm feeling your pain. Sparky D says, I thought Trippier looked good at left back against Scotland. Would you play Tino at right back, Mal, and move Trippier to left back?
No. He did do quite well, I thought, Trippier at left back, but no, you get the best out of him on the right hand side. So and anyway, we've got left backs coming through. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, but what about the left back for Saturday night? Because I don't want it to be Dan Burn. I love Dan Burn. He's a lovely man. He has got a heart the size of the rest of them. There's no question about that. But I think that he struggled the last couple of games left back and then playing left side centre half, which is his correct position when Hoffman was injured. I think he struggled and he suddenly looked a bit of a trundler, you know. He looked, the lack of pace showed up, and I thought he got a bit of a tousing in both games, and I think it's just right to bring him out. So if I bring him out, I've then got to think who plays left back. Now, Target is really disillusioned me. He's not stepped up to the mark. I've said that he's not got the quickness because he's not playing regularly. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Then I'm watching the benefit. He's not only one pace, but the pace of the game, mind-wise, he's not quick.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's the answer. So my worry then is twofold. I thought when I watched Trippier, I must say, like that young man did there, could you play Trippier and Lafrenko? Not for good, just for the one match this weekend. And you could, because this Lafrenko has played pre-season with Southampton, and I would give Hall a go, you know. But the manager says, is he up to speed? He's 18, he's a young lad, he's been quick. He's trained, the last fortnight, he's trained with the full England side. At the beginning of the fortnight, he was brought up from the under-20s to train with the full England side. Now, my question to Eddie, and I bow to Eddie's better judgment, he sees them every day, etc., 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 etc. But if the word is that Lewis Hall never played pre-season at all at Chelsea and then has come up here, so he hasn't got games behind him. Well, when is he going to get games behind him? He's not playing for the under-21s. He's not getting on his sub for even a few minutes with Newcastle United. So how long is it going to take him to get up to, if he's not given a chance? And we are so badly off. We sound well off, but we're not. If I dismiss Dan out the equation and I dismiss Target out the equation, I'm then looking at whether Trippier comes across, whether you put Hall in, or whether you dust down somebody who I haven't seen since I saw Lord Lucan riding down Northumberland Street on Shergar, and that's Paul Dummett, you know. But I just don't think it. Actually don't think it's fair on Dan at the moment, Dan Burn, because I think he looks like bless him, he looks like a cart horse in a derby race. And I want another left back, and I can't think of anything bar giving the kid a chance, Hall, because I think he is going to be a quality player long term, quality player.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lewis Hall to come in. Mal, would you be happy with that this weekend against Brentford?
I think you've absolutely finished him off there. He's having a little think.
He is. He seems to have gone into pause mode there. I tell you what we'll do. We'll get Malcolm back. I do want to go to this question. A couple of people asked questions here. Do you think it was Dave? Here it is. Do you think these journalists at the press conferences don't ask the right questions? And Tim Gill says, having listened to Eddie Howe's press conferences for the last 2 years, do you think our journalists are too polite? No one ever questions the team selection or tactics.
I think, I mean, I'm not going to have a dip at Hacks because these are my colleagues and the top men. I think, and this isn't a go at Eddie Howe, but I think if you asked Eddie Howe what sort of day it is outside, he'll say, well, it'll either be sunny or it could be raining. He wouldn't tell you which it was because he never... And it's an art, and I know he doesn't want to give away any information that will help the opposition. But honestly, I listen to his press conferences and I smile because there isn't an answer to a question. You ask a straightforward question, will Botman play on Saturday? Well, we're hoping that he might train today. We'll have a look at him on match day and then we'll make a decision. Well, is that a yes or a no? It happens. And yes, I don't think that managers are pushed hard enough at collective press conferences. But in the old days, I used to go and see Joe Harvey on a one-on-one, and we're sat in his office, and you could ask him, and there was no cameras there. You could press him and press him and press him, and same with Gordon Lee, until they exploded if they didn't like what you were pressing them on. But you didn't have to let them off the hook. Now, if you're a press man, I think you're more or less told you've got 3 questions and ends on to somebody else. So you get straight. I mean, Eddie Howe must be football's answer to Jeff Boycott, straight bat and pad. He's brilliant there. He tells you, I mean, at the end of an hour and a half press conference, I haven't learned a solitary single thing that I didn't know when I went in. And that happens at press conferences these days. And there's very little. I mean, the one thing where he does it with absolute respect on his face and with a lovely smile. Some managers, you can actually see them irritated by the simplest of questions.
And you can see contempt written across their forehead.
Yes. So I don't think that they produce much in the way of answers any press conference. But I do also feel that a lot of managers are given an easy ride. And I mean, sometimes I'm shouting at the screen my question, but of course he can't hear us because he's sitting somewhere else. That does bug me at sometimes because I want an answer to my question. And I've actually heard somebody ask a question I wanted to ask, and I thought, hurrah. And then I've listened to the answer, and I would love to be in, because I would then say, but Eddie, that's not an answer to the question. Can I give you the question again? And might you answer it this time? But that applies to every manager. The modern manager does it that way. The old managers, when you didn't sit in front of television cameras like you do with press conferences, produced a lot more honesty. I mean, I used to get the team off Joe on a Thursday or Friday morning, and I didn't say it was off Joe. I just forecast what I thought the team would be. And it was amazing how I got it right so often.
Malcolm, before you disappeared with a technical glitch, I just wanted to know: would you start Lewis Hall against Brentford at left back?
I'd be quite happy to start him. Yes, yeah. That I think we've heard some absolutely terrific things about the lad. Yeah, give him a chance, and from what I understand, that he's very mature in the way that he goes about his game. So, yeah, put him in, and it's amazing, you know. It's amazing the reaction that you get from senior players when they've got a youngster in the side, you know, and they change their game to help the youngster out as much as they can, and to really give him a chance to blood in, and it brings the best out of senior players. So yeah, you can't go sticking sort of half a dozen youngsters in, but just do it one at a time, and see the effect that it has generally on the team.
Yeah, we'll have to wait until Eddie's press conference, I guess, for injury updates. But I think, you know, Tonali's the big doubt, isn't he? Jody Tumbalite asking us any injury updates, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be significant. What we find out is not what will be actually happening. I'm talking about the press conference. Tonali could well be used in the way I said earlier, if Eddie wants to, saying, look, we'll not press you for Brentford, but we'll play you against AC Milan. That can come into it. I'm pleased with Joe Linton that while he's been away with Brazil, he's perhaps got a lot of training under his belt. He's hardly played. He's gone on in both their games, but only for a few minutes in both games. So he's had something of a rest because he was just playing, getting injured, spending all the time in the treatment room, playing, getting injured, spending all the time in the treatment room. He was never training. And hopefully that has changed with Brazil over the fortnight. Botman, I would think, will make it. Tonali will be whether he wants to make, whether Eddie wants him to make it or not. Elliot Anderson, I think it was a convenient injury, nothing to worry about. He just hadn't enjoyed his 2 days training with Scotland and realised that if he stayed in this is me talking, not him, by the way, in fairness to Elliot, but if he'd stayed with them, the odds are that he would have at least been put on as a sub against Cyprus, because Steve Clarke would have made certain he did that. Because if he did, because Cyprus was a competitive game, he would have been committed to Scotland for the rest of his international career if he'd gone on as a sub. He wouldn't have started at Cyprus, but he would have gone on as a sub, and that would have committed him. So he had to make the decision, if he was having second thoughts about Scotland, not to put himself in that situation. And I think there was as much of that in his decision as there was an injury, which I'm not suggesting there wasn't an injury, but I don't think it'll do anything towards keeping him out of the equation on Saturday night, whether it's starting or whether it's as a sub. The interesting thing with Scotland for me is that we've got Anderson and Harvey Barnes supposedly thinking about whether they switch their allegiance to Scotland. If I was Elliot, I wouldn't. And I think the case is totally different between Anderson and Barnes. Why? Because Anderson's only 20-year-old, and I think he's still got a very good future that he could have with England, which is where he was born, where he's brought up. His grandma's Scottish, so he qualifies for Scotland. But he can think, I can still play for England, etc. And I'm certain that if he was nailed on, you can definitely become a full England international or definitely a full Scottish international. He would choose England. He's only 20. He's got time for that decision. If I'm Harvey Barnes, I go and play for Scotland. Why? Because I'm 25. I'm not 20 like Anderson. I'm 25. So I am what I am by now. He got one England cap. It was a friendly, so he's not committed to England. He's never got near the squad since. If you look at players that play out wide for England, Saka, Rashford, Foden, Grealish, he's not going to get anywhere near starting in the England side against the four I've just named. Saka, Rashford, Foden, and Grealish, he's got no chance. So I would have an international career if I was Harvey Barnes, who qualifies for Scotland in the way Elliot Anderson does. If I was Harvey Barnes, I'd go and play for Scotland because I'm not going to play for England. If I'm Elliot Anderson, I keep my options open. I'm 5 years younger than Barnes, and I might have an England future. I mean, as I've also saw old internationals say, it's an absolute disgrace. You should play for the country where you're born. You shouldn't be able to switch, having played for one side to the other, etc., etc. Hey, the rules are what they are, and at the moment you can do this. For goodness' sake, Big Jack Charlton, if you had a pint of Guinness in a Dublin bar, you're qualified to play for the Republic of Ireland. I mean, was there anybody that played for the Republic of Ireland under Jack that was actually born in Ireland, including Big Jack himself? So, I mean, if you had a pint of Guinness in a Dublin bar, you could sign the form and you played for the Republic of Ireland. I mean, you just can handle what the rules say. Interesting, isn't it? Because the two people running the Scottish side are old Newcastle coaches, Steve Clarke and John Carver. They've got decisions to make. Anderson and Bonds have got decisions to make, and Eddie Howe's got decisions to make about Anderson and Bonds. Do they start Saturday? Do they start AC Milan? Do they start in the League Cup against Man City or what? So there's a load of decisions regarding those two players to be made, isn't there? At the moment, the players have got to make decisions. Steve Clarke and John Carver's got to make decisions, and Eddie Howe's got to make decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of decisions to be made. We'll touch on that in a second. I wanted to come to Paul's question. Does anyone else think that there is an element of Gerrard Lampard's situation with England in relation to Bruno and Tonali at Newcastle? I'm not certain they can play together as they are very similar players. What's your view on this, Malcolm? It's been an ongoing debate for the last few weeks.
I don't see the problem. I think personally that Tonali should be playing on the left-hand side, and with Bruno in the middle, and we would see, I think, a lot more from Tonali and his left foot.
I think we've bought a wonderful talent in Tonali, but I would question, and it's perhaps a naughty one, but I would question if his type of midfielder was what the team needed at the time. If we had got an out-and-out defensive midfielder to sit in front of the two centre-halves and let Bruno power onto the edge of the box, the opposing box, and try to score, and Joe Linton going forward, we would be much better off. And because we're not certain who's supposed to sit and who's supposed to go, is Bruno supposed to sit? But his whole nature, he wants to go forward. His whole nature is to go forward. And even if he's sitting, he'll suddenly come dribbling out the back with the ball because he wants to go forward. And that can be very dangerous, because if he loses it, we're in trouble. And I think that we are starting to look vulnerable at the back because that defensive shield is not in front of the two centre-halves. Because two out of the three plays defensive.
And the Liverpool game, the last 10 minutes, John, absolutely typified that situation.
Yes, there was no defensive shield, Malcolm. And I look at it, and people say, how did we do in the transfer window? My answer to that, and there's a little bit of hindsight in this, I accept that, and it's true, but I think we bought absolute quality, the players we bought. But did we buy players for the positions that were necessary now? We bought Tonali, who was terrific going forward. We didn't buy a defensive midfielder. We bought two reserve, if you want to be harsh, two reserve fullbacks, Lovrenko and the lad from Chelsea, who could be the Newcastle, the two fullbacks for the next 10 years. But are they needed now? You can argue the left back might be, but Trippier's playing it right there. So we signed two reserve fullbacks. And Tonali.
I get the impression, John, that that Trippier is looking to have a couple more seasons. I can well see him going on the coaching staff.
Oh, so can I. But we've got a problem now. Got a problem now, and our problem now is that we haven't a right-sided centre-half to challenge Shaw for his position, and Shaw can get injured and does quite regularly. We haven't got a right-sided centre-half doing that. We haven't got a defensive midfielder. but we've got two fullbacks they can't get in the team and an outside left they can't get in the team.
Yeah.
That we've bought this summer. Now, they're all quality players. That's what's reassuring to me. But with a priority, was a right back, a left back, and an outside left priority this summer. And for me, they weren't priority.
Mm.
The positions weren't priority. The players are fabulous.
Yeah. It seemed to me that it was overloaded on the left-hand side.
Well, if you take the outside left position, you can go with Gordon, you can go with Joe Linton, you can go with Isaac, you can go. I mean, there's a load of people can play there, and yet you go and sign Barnes. And, I know you've got to get some players when they're available. But Lafayette, I think, is a fabulous young player. But could we not have got somebody that will benefit with at AC Milan on Tuesday and got the right back to replace Trippier in a year's time? I wouldn't mind these guys coming in if we also had the money and PPF allowed us to also buy a central midfielder who's defensively minded and a right-sided centre-half. Come on, that's terrific. But at the moment, we have got three fabulous players that play in the midfield. We haven't found yet a way for them to play together, and we haven't been able to do that in the last fortnight because all three have been away. And in the meantime, if things go right, we can slaughter sides like Aston Villa 5-1 and those three will run the show. If things don't go right, then who's the defensive one out of that, and who does this and who does that? It's a current problem for us, I must say.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It'll be fascinating to see how Eddie tries to answer it on Saturday night.
Yeah, Newcastle United take on Brentford at home this coming Saturday, 5:30 kick-off live on Sky Sports. We know that Kraft and Willock both remain sidelined. Obviously, question marks over Tonali, Sven Botman, etc. We will find out a little bit more from Eddie Howe's press conference, but not too much. As for Brighton, well, Ivan Toney remains banned after admitting to illegal betting charges. Thomas Frank's side are unbeaten in 4 Premier League games this season. They won 3-0 at Fulham. They have also drawn against Spurs, Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. They ended last season with 5 wins out of 6 as well. So they're on a decent run of form. Referee is Craig Pawson. VAR is John Brooks. And this game, a question from Glenn Atkinson earlier on. He says, after losing 3 on the bounce, do you think that the Brentford game is a 6-pointer, Malcolm, if we want to finish in the top 6? Is this a 6-pointer? It's a bit too early for that, isn't it? We're only 1 point worse off after the corresponding fixtures last season. It's time to stay level-headed, I would say.
Yeah, it's time to stay level-headed, but if you think about it, every game is a 6-pointer. You've got to go and give it absolutely everything, and they've got to turn around this hat trick of losses and start winning. And Newcastle daren't lose this game, because otherwise you've with 4 in a row, that's sort of getting into a too strong a losing phase, and it's difficult to get out of, very difficult to get out of. And so I think Newcastle, if I would be quite happy to see them sitting back a little bit more, even though we're playing at home. We don't need gung-ho forward running all the while. And I think that what we've been lacking over those, over certainly Liverpool in the last 20 minutes or so, and for the whole game down at Brighton, what we lacked was game management. Mm-hmm. And that ability just to change things, as and the game does change, and so you have to change your thinking, your tactics, your positioning, with the whole side on a constant basis. And I just felt that at Liverpool, it was everybody charge forward and don't give a thought to what could happen at the back. And of course, it did happen in the last, at the very end of the game, twice. And they were identical almost, both those goals. And then we go to Brighton, and well, it was, I have to say, it was a shambles that I haven't seen under Eddie Howe beforehand. And so I would hope that he's had strong words with the players, really strong words.
I mean, from my point of view, looking Brentford after a fortnight of nothing happening, I'm delighted the Premier League's back this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Newcastle have lost the last 3. Brentford are unbeaten in 4. Something has to change, and I believe it will change in this match. My big feeling is that this is the comeback match for Newcastle United. This is the match where they can turn things round.
Yes.
I mean, Brentford are a good side. There's no question about that, and they've been built up, but they haven't got the best player, Ivan Toney. They haven't got him. They had him in both matches against us last season, and we did the double over them. They haven't got Ivan Toney. They are a good side, but they're not as good as Liverpool, the side that beat us up here the last time, and they're not a jinx team like Liverpool are. Liverpool get a result against us every time they play us. Brentford are not our jinx team. I honestly believe that if we go into this correctly, Eddie Howe gets a correct team out, and the players forget all about AC Milan on Tuesday, that may as well be 10 miles in the future as far as Saturday is concerned. We win Saturday and then we'll go on. And I believe that things aren't as bad as they look. We were shocking at Brighton, but before that, Man City wasn't too bad. Liverpool for an hour was fine. We slaughtered Villa 5-1. Good teams don't turn into bad teams overnight, and this team isn't a bad team. It needs tweaking. And we've got Brentford at home. If you just look at the Premier League, we've got Brentford at home and Sheffield United away. Those are 2 winnable matches for Newcastle United. And I'm taking Newcastle to beat Brentford, which will completely change the mood for us going out to AC Milan. I think it'll be tough. It might only be 2-1. It might be better than 2-1. But we will win. Whatever side Eddie Howe puts out, there's 50,000 Geordies in that crowd. It'll be willing them to win from the kickoff till the end. And I think we will win. I'm taking 2-1. It might be better now, but I think we will win, and that will change the mood considerably. We've got to win, as Malcolm said. I dare not think about losing because 4 on the trot and go to AC Milan after that, I don't even want to contemplate that because I don't believe it'll happen. I'm taking Newcastle to win.
Okay, Malcolm,
I'm going to take Newcastle to win. What I really would like to see is that we get a clean sheet. And
can you remember those things, Malcolm?
Well, yeah, precisely, John. I can't remember the last clean sheet now. Way back into last season.
Okay, I'm gonna complete the set. I'm gonna go for a win as well, lads. I think it'll be.
I'm going 2-0.
You're going 2-0. I'm going to go 2-1. I think Brentford are good enough to score, but I think I don't think you'll get the clean sheet, but I think we'll get a win, and it'll be a confidence boost for the fans more than anything else who've really hit rock bottom because of the defeats. It is always difficult to take, but yeah, great show as always. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thanks for getting involved. Some great questions there today. I hope you enjoyed the debate. Supermac and Gibbo and myself will be back next Thursday. Look forward to seeing you then, guys. Take care.
Keep the faith, fellas. Keep the faith. We'll be there again.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button
with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.